After the age of 58, stepping into a new relationship may not be the fairy tale that society promises. On the contrary, it can mark the beginning of a silent erosion of everything you worked decades to achieve: your hard-earned freedom, your personal rituals, your peace of mind. Advertisements show smiling silver-haired couples on cruises. Movies glorify late-life romance with candlelit dinners in picturesque parks, and family members whisper, "Don't you want someone to take care of you?" But what no one dares to say out loud is that many of these late-age relationships lead not to joy, but to exhaustion, tension, and loss of autonomy, the very things that should define your golden years. Think about it. You spent decades sustaining a household, raising children, enduring one or maybe two separations, or perhaps surviving the loss of a spouse. You sacrificed nights of sleep, worked through financial storms, and made compromises year after year in the name of family. And now, at 60, 65, 70 years old, when you finally could wake up without an alarm, travel without negotiation, eat what you want without complaint, the world insists you should not die alone. That phrase strikes the deepest human fear: abandonment. Yet what most never realize is that in trying to escape loneliness, many walk straight into a cage disguised as companionship, a cage that slowly eats away at their final years of peace. In my years counseling older adults, I've heard stories that sound almost cinematic in their tragedy. One man, 64 years old, a retired lecturer, once told me, "I spent my youth locked in timetables, lectures, staff meetings, endless evaluations. Now that I could finally wake at 10 and sip coffee while reading quietly, I invited someone into my life who turned every morning into a battle." He wasn't describing violence. He was describing hundreds of small intrusions, complaints about how he brewed his coffee too strong, irritation at the piles of books stacked in the living room, questions about why he spent hours alone in his study. Each was minor on its own, but together they became suffocating. And this isn't only about domestic disagreements. Aging brings something unspoken: the right to embrace your habits as trophies. That chair you always sit in, the songs from your youth you still replay, the strange but comforting ways you organize your kitchen, these are not quirks. They are extensions of your identity. Entering a relationship late in life means surrendering pieces of this identity. Suddenly that chair is replaced with a stylish couch, the music is lowered because it's too loud. The solo trip you'd planned turns into an exhausting compromise over destinations and schedules. One woman, 70 years old, retired from government service, once said to me with tears in her eyes, "I waited my whole life to finally live in a house that reflects my choices. After my children left and after my husband passed, I finally knew peace. And now they expect me to invite someone to disturb it? Why?" Her words captured a truth many deny. Sometimes what people call loneliness is simply others refusing to accept your contentment in solitude. This is where the most dangerous myth begins. Loneliness is not the same as being alone. Being alone can be chosen, sacred, empowering. Loneliness is the absence of meaning. But when the two are confused, people leap into relationships they don't truly want. Relationships meant not for joy, but for anesthetizing fear. The result? They trade silence for irritation, freedom for obligation, tranquility for endless explanations. Science supports what intuition already whispers. A study from Seoul National University followed people aged 62 to 78 and found that those forced to change their routines had anxiety levels 39% higher than those who maintained them. It isn't stubbornness, it's biology. An aging brain craves stability. Each forced adjustment, different meal times, altered sleeping patterns, shared spaces, drains mental energy and accelerates decline. What a younger person might shrug off as compromise, an older mind experiences as stress, sometimes with devastating consequences. And here is the cruel arithmetic few dare to say aloud: time. At 30, losing 2 years in a bad relationship feels like a setback, but it can be recovered. At 70, 2 years may represent 15% of what you have left. A patient of mine, 73 years old, put it bluntly, "I spent 3 years trying to adapt to someone who never respected me. 3 years is nearly 1/6 of what remains of my life. I wasted it." That statement struck me because it framed aging in the clearest, harshest light. Every year matters exponentially more. This, then, is the first of 5 brutal truths about late-life relationships. The freedom you fought for is your greatest treasure. And surrendering it in the name of companionship often means entering a gilded prison. But this is only the opening act. In the next blocks, we'll dive deeper. How families erupt into silent wars when a new partner appears, how emotional dependency at this stage can destroy dignity, how the body itself begins to collapse under chronic stress, and why adaptation past 60 becomes almost impossible. So I ask you now, are you prepared to hear what no one else dares to say? When you bring a new partner into your life after 60, you're not only inviting them into your house, your habits, and your body. You're also inviting them into the delicate ecosystem of your family. And this is where one of the most painful truths emerges. Children, grandchildren, siblings, they rarely welcome this new chapter with open arms. More often than not, it becomes a war fought in whispers, accusations, and fractured bonds that may never heal. I once spoke with a woman of 67, widowed for 5 years, who had raised 3 children while working as a school administrator. When she finally allowed herself to start dating again, she thought her children would be happy for her. Instead, they stopped calling. Her eldest son told her bluntly, "You're betraying Dad's memory." Her daughter refused to bring the grandchildren to visit, saying the new man was a stranger. The irony? That relationship lasted barely 7 months, but the damage lingered. Years later, she still spent Christmas alone because her children hadn't forgiven her. What destroyed her wasn't the breakup. It was the fracture with the very family she had sacrificed 4 decades for. This is not an isolated story. In my practice, I've seen countless families torn apart by the mere idea of an older parent remarrying. On the surface, children often claim it's about loyalty to the deceased parent or about embarrassment. But underneath lies a harsher truth: money, inheritance, assets that the children already believe are theirs. Suddenly, a new partner feels like a threat, someone who might steal what was meant for the bloodline. It's brutal, but very real. Take the case of a 72-year-old engineer I once worked with. After remarrying a woman 14 years younger, he decided to update his will. He didn't cut his children out, but he left 40% of his estate to his new wife. His children, furious, accused him of betrayal. They stopped visiting. They told him he had been manipulated, seduced for his wealth. But the truth was simple. He loved her and wanted her to be secure if he passed. Yet, the fallout was catastrophic. Siblings fought in court. Grandchildren were forbidden from seeing their grandfather, and the man who had built his family home brick by brick died surrounded by lawyers instead of loved ones. This financial paranoia doesn't only poison the children's hearts, it poisons the older adult as well. I recall a retired nurse, 69, who confided in me. "Every time I buy something for my new partner, I hear my daughter's voice in my head. 'That money should be for us, Mom.'" She stopped going on trips, stopped buying gifts, stopped living freely. Not because she couldn't afford it, but because she was weighed down by guilt, as though every dollar spent was an act of betrayal to her own blood. This is how family ties become chains. And then there is the cruelest weapon of all: grandchildren. Many older adults tell me their children say things like, "If you keep seeing him, don't expect to see the kids." Imagine the pain of raising your grandchildren, picking them up from school, nursing them through fevers, and suddenly being cut off because you chose companionship. One man, 74, told me he hadn't seen his grandkids in nearly a year. because his son refused to let them get confused by a step-grandmother. He said to me, with tears in his eyes, "I survived cancer twice. I thought I could survive anything, but not this, not being erased from my grandchildren's lives." It doesn't stop with family. Society judges, too. Neighbors gossip, church communities whisper. She couldn't wait to replace her husband. He's just after her pension. A woman of 71 told me she had to move out of the neighborhood she had lived in for 28 years because the stares and muttered insults became unbearable. "They made me feel like a traitor," she said, "as if wanting company meant I was immoral." The loneliness of widowhood was already heavy, but the weight of public shame was heavier still. Science backs up what these stories reveal. Stress caused by family rejection or social judgment is lethal. Researchers at the University of Toronto found that older adults facing family conflict were 42% more likely to develop clinical depression within 5 years than those with supportive families. Another study revealed that chronic rejection doubles the risk of developing heart disease in seniors. That means the disapproval of your own children can literally carve years off your life. So let's be brutally honest. When you consider entering a new relationship after 60, you're not just risking your peace. You're gambling with your family harmony, your grandchildren's love, your legacy, and even your health. And more often than not, the bet is lost. Now let's pause for a moment. If you've been listening closely, maybe you recognize pieces of your own story in these words. Maybe you've felt judged. Maybe you've seen the way your children's faces change when you mention someone new. Maybe you've stayed silent, avoiding confrontation. This is your space to reflect and to share. If this video resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Not because I want another number on a screen, but because here we say out loud the truths others are too afraid to voice. And I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever faced resistance from your family when you started or even considered a relationship later in life? Share your story in the comments. Your words might give courage to someone who feels alone in this exact struggle. Because here's the truth: silence isolates. But when we share, we create community. There is a hidden trap in late-life relationships that is more dangerous than anyone admits: emotional dependency. At first, it feels harmless. The joy of having someone to call, the warmth of sharing meals, the comfort of another presence in the room. But over time, that comfort can twist into a chain, one that binds tighter than steel, and the older you are, the harder it is to break. Take the story of Daniel, 66, a retired firefighter. After losing his wife, he spent 4 years painfully learning how to live alone. He discovered a rhythm: morning walks, cooking simple meals, joining a local chess club. He built a life that was his, not dependent on anyone. Then he met a woman at a community gardening project. Within months, everything shifted. He started skipping the chess club because she didn't like being left alone. He stopped cooking the dishes he enjoyed because she didn't eat them. Soon he realized that his moods rose and fell only with her approval. "I thought I was free," he told me, "but now I can't go a single day without her voice. I don't even recognize myself anymore." This is what makes late-age dependency so devastating. It's not just about needing someone, it's about erasing yourself in the process. And the brain, in older age, is uniquely vulnerable. Neuroscientists from the University of Edinburgh discovered that older adults who fall into sudden, intense romantic attachments show dopamine surges comparable to teenagers in first love, but without the same neural resilience to handle the highs and lows. In plain language, your brain can literally become addicted, but your emotional recovery system is weaker than it was at 20. That makes heartbreak after 65 feel less like a bruise and more like a fracture that never fully heals. I recall a woman named Helen, 68, a retired librarian. She had spent years cultivating her independence, traveling on her own, even writing poetry. Then she met a man at an art workshop. Within 6 months, she confessed that she had stopped writing completely. "Every poem I start feels like it has to be about him," she said. "I don't even know what my own voice sounds like anymore." Her independence, which had taken years to reclaim after widowhood, evaporated in half a year. This is the cruelty of dependency. What you gain quickly can cost you the stability you fought for slowly. Dependency also brings tolerance of the intolerable. I knew a man of 71 whose new partner routinely insulted him, mocking his forgetfulness, belittling his health struggles, even laughing at his hearing aids. Any outsider would say, "Leave." But when I asked him why he stayed, his answer was chilling. "Because if I leave, who else would want me? At least with her, I'm not invisible." That is the tragic bargain many make, enduring humiliation simply to avoid the terror of solitude. There's another dimension, the transfer of identity. I once worked with a retired teacher, 65, who had been vegetarian for over 3 decades. After entering a new relationship, she began eating meat again because her partner teased her relentlessly. Another patient, a lifelong atheist at 70, suddenly began attending church because his new girlfriend insisted faith was essential. In both cases, the individuals admitted, "I don't believe in this, but I'm afraid if I resist, I'll lose them." Imagine spending your entire life forming convictions, only to abandon them at the very moment you should feel most secure in who you are. The isolation that comes with dependency is another silent killer. Many patients tell me how they gradually stopped seeing friends because their partner disapproved or because they feared conflict. One woman, 72, shared, "I gave up my book club, my walks with neighbors, even my weekly calls with my cousin, because every time I did, he sulked. Now my whole world is him. If he leaves, I have no one." Dependency shrinks your world until it fits inside one person. And when that person disappoints or disappears, the emptiness is unbearable. And let's face the harsh biological truth. Older adults have less time and energy to recover from emotional collapse. A breakup at 30 might hurt for a year, but you still have decades to rebuild. At 70, a heartbreak can consume the remainder of your healthy years. Psychologists call this the narrowing window. Every trauma takes a larger percentage of your remaining life. One betrayal, one abandonment can feel like the end of the road. This is why dependency often leads to quiet despair. Some older adults would rather endure mistreatment than risk solitude again. A retired accountant, 74, once told me, "My partner criticizes everything I do. She calls me useless. She spends my pension recklessly, but I stay. Because the silence of an empty house terrifies me more than her cruelty." His words still haunt me. This is not love, it is survival at any cost. Worse still, dependency corrodes dignity. To watch strong, resilient people who raised families, built careers, survived losses, reduced to begging for text messages or crying over delayed calls, is heartbreaking. One woman, 65, said, "I feel like a teenager again, but not in a good way. More like a teenager trapped in panic, waiting for a reply that never comes." Late life dependency infantilizes adults who should be enjoying the sovereignty of their golden years. Let's be blunt. Emotional dependency after 60 is a prison more suffocating than loneliness, because at least loneliness leaves you with yourself. Dependency takes even that away. When people think of a bad relationship, they imagine heartbreak, arguments, maybe the ache of disappointment. But what most don't realize is that toxic love at 60, 70, or beyond doesn't just bruise the heart, it breaks the body. Stress in older age is not the same as stress at 30. At 30, you bounce back. At 70, stress seeps into your bones, your blood, your brain. It lingers, corrodes, and silently rewires your biology. A study conducted at the University of Michigan followed 4,200 older adults over 7 years. The results were chilling. Those in high-conflict relationships had cortisol levels, the body's primary stress hormone, that remained elevated all day, every day, as if they were living in a war zone. Elevated cortisol in seniors is not just uncomfortable, it is deadly. It accelerates bone loss, weakens the immune system, damages the heart, and erodes memory. In simple terms, a toxic partner can make you age twice as fast. I remember a patient named Robert, 72, a former architect. After marrying a woman he believed would bring him joy, he developed severe hypertension within 2 years. He told me, every dinner felt like an interrogation. Every trip to the store ended in a fight. I went to bed with my jaw clenched so tight that I cracked a molar in my sleep. Within 18 months, he had 2 minor strokes. His doctors prescribed medication, but the real prescription he needed was freedom. His blood pressure only stabilized after he separated. Then there was Julia, 69, a retired nurse. She had survived decades of hospital shifts, emergencies, and family crises with remarkable resilience. But after entering a relationship with a man who constantly criticized her, she developed chronic gastritis. She said, "I could handle screaming patients and endless night shifts. What I couldn't handle was being told every day that I was worthless." She spent more money on acid reflux medication than on groceries until she realized that no pill could neutralize the poison of daily contempt. This is what science now calls allostatic load, the wear and tear on the body from chronic stress. For older adults, the consequences are catastrophic. Muscle mass evaporates faster. Infections that would once be trivial turn life-threatening. Sleep, the body's greatest healer, becomes fractured. One night of poor sleep at 70 isn't just an inconvenience. It can destabilize blood sugar, impair memory, and weaken immunity. Imagine what years of poor sleep caused by arguments, anxiety, and tears can do. Researchers from King's College London found that seniors in unhappy relationships were 33% more likely to develop type 2 diabetes within 5 years. Another study in Australia linked marital tension in older adults to a 29% increase in heart attack risk. These aren't abstract numbers. They are years stolen from lives, grandchildren never met, sunsets never seen. I recall a man, 75, who told me something unforgettable. "Doctor, I spent 40 years dreaming of fishing when I retired. But since I remarried, I haven't cast a line once. I'm too tired, my chest hurts, my back aches. And I know it's not my age, it's her constant shouting. She's killing me slowly, one argument at a time." His words might sound dramatic, but autopsies of stress-ravaged bodies prove him right. Emotional pain translates directly into physical decline. The cruelest irony is this: many older adults take handfuls of pills to treat conditions that are actually symptoms of relationship stress. Antidepressants for sadness that comes from constant criticism, sleeping pills for insomnia fueled by arguments, blood pressure medication for hypertension spiked by conflict, acid reducers for stomachs twisted by anxiety. Each pill creates side effects. Each side effect demands another pill until the bathroom cabinet looks like a pharmacy. But the true cure, leaving the toxic relationship, is the one most resist. One woman, 70, told me she was taking 13 medications a day. "I swallowed them like candy," she said, "but no doctor ever asked if the real problem was my husband's cruelty. They just keep refilling prescriptions." She wasn't sick from age. She was sick from living in a constant state of fear and tension. The body doesn't lie. When you are unhappy in love after 60, it shows up in every cell. Elevated cortisol shrinks the hippocampus, the brain's memory center, making Alzheimer's disease more likely. Chronic stress inflames arteries, creating clots that can trigger strokes. Even laughter, one of the body's greatest healers, disappears. Studies show older adults in unhappy relationships laugh 60% less than their single peers. Without laughter, endorphins vanish, and the heart weakens. It's not just about living shorter, it's about living worse. Weak bones, fragile muscles, clouded memory, endless fatigue. Days defined by doctor visits instead of joy. Nights defined by tears instead of rest. A toxic relationship robs you not only of years, but of quality in the years you have left. And here lies the most terrifying statistic. Seniors in toxic relationships live, on average, 4.2 years less than seniors who remain single and content. That's nearly half a decade lost. Imagine what you could do with those years. Write your memoir, watch your grandchildren graduate, see another corner of the world. Now imagine throwing it all away, not to illness, not to fate, but to the stress of an avoidable relationship. Let's be clear, a toxic partner in later life is not just bad company. They are a health hazard as real as smoking or untreated high blood pressure, and yet many endure, not realizing that every argument, every criticism, every sleepless night is a slow erosion of life itself. The final truth is one that many refuse to acknowledge. Adaptation after 60 is not just difficult, it is nearly impossible. And forcing yourself to adjust to another person's lifestyle in your later years can become the greatest thief of peace you will ever encounter. Why? Because by the time you reach 60, 70, your habits are no longer just preferences. They are extensions of your identity, the scaffolding that holds your sense of control. You wake at 6 because that's how you've started your day for 40 years. You drink tea at night because it comforts you. You read the newspaper in silence because it grounds you. These are not trivial quirks. They are survival mechanisms, carefully carved through decades of work, loss, and resilience. Disrupting them is like tearing down the walls of a house and expecting it to still stand. Consider the case of Frank, 68, a retired pilot. He lived with military precision, lights off by 10, breakfast at exactly 7, his shirts folded a certain way. When he began living with a partner who thrived on spontaneity, late-night movies, unplanned trips, casual disorder, he felt like the floor had been pulled from beneath him. After only 4 months, he developed migraines. Every day feels like turbulence, he confessed. The irony was sharp. A man who had flown through storms at 30,000 feet could not survive the storm of mismatched habits at home. Or take Linda, 71, a former theater actress. For decades, she thrived on chaos, rehearsals at midnight, long dinners with friends, noisy laughter spilling into early morning. She fell in love with a man who prized silence, routine, and early bedtimes. Within 6 months, she was sneaking into her own living room to watch television on low volume, terrified of waking him. "I feel like a guest in my own house," she admitted. What should have been a partnership became a rehearsal for repression. Science explains this phenomenon. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire, declines steeply with age. By 70, forming new habits takes up to 3 times more energy than it does at 40. What a younger adult experiences as a mild inconvenience, an older adult experiences as a full assault on the nervous system. The University of Tokyo found that seniors forced to change daily routines against their will showed a 45% faster rate of cognitive decline than those who kept stable habits. Translation: adapting to someone else's rhythm at that age is not only exhausting, it is harmful. And then there are the physical mismatches. Imagine a man of 74 with arthritis who prefers quiet walks, paired with a partner who loves hiking steep trails, or a woman of 69 with diabetes who needs strict meals, matched with someone who adores heavy restaurant food. These aren't just lifestyle differences, they are health hazards. I once counseled a couple where the husband, 72, with a heart condition, pushed himself to keep up with his partner's social life, parties, late nights, constant travel. Within a year, he had 2 heart attacks. The relationship ended not with a breakup, but with an ambulance. Every compromise costs energy, arguing about thermostat settings, negotiating bedtime, rearranging the refrigerator. Each small adjustment drains reserves you no longer have in abundance. And when you realize that years are slipping away in negotiations over trivialities, the grief is immense. A patient once told me, "I wasted 2 of my last 10 good years arguing about curtain colors. I will never forgive myself for that." The tragedy is that many persist, believing that love demands compromise. At 20 perhaps, at 30 maybe. But at 70, compromise often means dismantling the life you fought decades to build. It means giving away your most sacred reward, the right to live exactly as you please. And so we arrive at the brutal conclusion. 5 truths that society hides beneath rose-colored stories of late romance,